All right, joining me now, I love him. I love your family. I love your father, your godfather, all the great people. You do such a great job here at All PHLY. Rich Hofmann joins us. Make sure you read Rich. What do you say, buddy?
What's up, man? That was a fun night last night.
Right? Wasn't that a great night?
Well, especially because the night before was rough. I like what you said. We needed something. It's not going to be the be-all, end-all, but we needed something to pick up our spirits, right?
Like these little moments. It's in life. The example would be, or the analogy would be holidays, right? Like when you get to the holiday, you feel good, right? Like you go, all right, the next holiday, like we just got done Easter, right? The next holiday, Mother's Day's fun, and then springtime, and I got a vacation coming up. Those are the moments. And so when the superstars deliver, or you have a night in Philadelphia sports like that, you feel good.
Totally. You have a little bit of hope too, right? You know, like obviously I think we knew the Phillies were a little bit better than their 1-3 record. We've seen them struggle early on in seasons. You know, I think Monday's loss kind of made you feel like, man, I've seen this story before a little bit. But yeah, that and just getting the big fella back, it just makes you feel like, okay, maybe there's some positivity around the corner here.
All right, first, real quick, before we get into it, because I want to dive into Harper with you. I want to dive into Embiid with you. Iverson's fat pea hat and corduroy jacket, which I love. But I do want to tell everybody, because this is like family here. So your dad, Rich Hofmann, senior, right? Was it senior or junior?
Senior. I'm junior.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if the middle names, because
sure, absolutely.
My dad is Anthony R. Gargano. I'm Anthony L. Gargano. So your father, one of the great writers, columnists in this town, like legendary. I grew up reading him, and then we became colleagues, and I love him. Pat, your godfather.
Yeah, my Uncle Pat.
Yeah, who I love, Pat McClune. I referenced him earlier, who is the editor of the Daily News. And you chose to follow in the family footsteps.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. My dad wasn't exactly, he didn't talk me out of it, but he didn't talk me into it either, I would say, which was great. He was really supportive. And yeah, I grew up, the Daily News was like my family business, specifically the Daily News sports section with, and I think a lot of people know, like, you saw all those faces on Daily News Live for all those years, but those people kind of in the office, behind the scenes or whatever, those are my people. And it was, I thought it was the best sports section in the town. I think everybody took a lot of pride in that.
It was awesome. Yeah. Listen, I worked for the Inquirer, and it's funny because your Uncle Pat would always say, you belong with us over here. I'd say I would spend more time in the office with Uncle Pat than I would in my own section.
Yeah, and like there were so many characters who were covering, the Mike Kearns, the Dick Girardi, those guys.
Mike is the best. Yeah.
Bob Cooney, well.
I love Bobby. Yeah, right? Yeah.
So it was just a lot of great people.
Eddie Barkowitz, you can read here. Les Bowen, I think you might be able to read here pretty soon.
Yeah.
I love that part. Like that to me was like the fabric of the town.
Totally.
Right? Like, the people paper.
Phil Jasner,
yes.
Paul Domowitch, Dane O'Neill. Yeah, just so many names. And they just
and you grew up in this whole thing, which I love. I think it's fat, and I love the fact that you follow in the footsteps and you have that same way with words. I love words, and I love to read. I love to write more than anything in this world. More than, like, to me, this is just a passion, right? Like I'll talk sports all day long.
So let me ask you though.
Yeah,
writing is harder though, right? Would you say, or do you find it easier? I find it like having written. That's what people always say, that having written is the most satisfying thing when you write something good. But
that's a line from like The Odd Couple years ago. He was a sports writer, and that was the line from The Odd Couple. That line. Do I love the process of writing? I love having written.
Yeah,
is the line. Yeah,
I find that too, even though I still do it every day. But sometimes it can be kind of painstaking. Like doing this right now, this is fun, man. Like the process of this, I like this a lot more.
You know what? It's interesting because you're right. I just finished a screenplay, so it took me 3 months or whatever. And when you begin the process, you want it done to the next day, but it's just a little at a time. But I love doing it. There's nothing better than being in your thoughts. All right. Let's get to it, because the big story of the day, of course, is Bryce, Harper, and Joel Embiid, the superstars. And it's presented by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Check out TrueMark.com/PHLY or stop in your local branch to learn more about the credit union difference at TrueMark Financial today. Start with Bryce. This is why you love superstars, because he's Utley and Howard and he's Schmidt and all those great Phillies, but with a personality.
Totally. And like, if you remember last year, cuz like he didn't hit home runs for 2 months after he came back from the Tommy John surgery. And you look up at the end of the year, even though he did not have his power, which I think that had to do with the injury. You look up at the end of the year, he's like top 10 in OPS. Like he still had a great year. You still felt like he was going to come back strong. So, he starts this year. He has the back issue in spring training. And man, on Monday night, I was like, man, he's not looking too good. His timing is way off.
It was 0 for 5. It was a bad night.
He has not had a hit in 3 games. Really has not come all that close to it. I mean, in fairness, there were a couple nice catches in those first games. But then he hits 3 home runs in like awful conditions. You said it on the show I was listening to earlier. March, April baseball, awful. I just remember playing as a kid too, like especially like you remember like hitting the ball off the end of the bat. Like,
your hands. Oh, and I live it now because my 11-year-old plays 11U baseball, and so we were at Ripken, and it was raining Saturday, and like you hit that ball, especially those aluminum bats. You hit it off the end, your hands are reverberating.
Totally, and I just remember like, and by the way, I loved playing baseball. I love the standing around nature of it, waiting for a ball to get hit to me. It doesn't work for you though in freezing temperatures.
Yep.
And man, like when the ball would go off the end of the bat, like I wouldn't tell the pitcher, but there were a lot of times I wasn't swinging the rest of the AB after that one. Yeah. So for him to hit those 3 home runs in that weather though, like that first one, it was 420 feet the opposite way, because that is like a bomb. If that ball is hit in June, July, like
God,
like that is way out.
That hits City Hall.
Yeah. So, and like, look, we've seen this from Bryce, and obviously much bigger moments than April 2nd, April 3rd, whatever it is. But yeah, like it was incredible. And frankly, you saw on that third at bat, he was going for it. Like he was like, if I hit a single, it will be a mistake. Like I am not. And by the way, it was ball 4, but it was right in that kind of down and in zone of the lefties, and he golfed it out. And it's like, it's funny with Bryce. I said this,
even the one out, it was a C, the line drive to center.
And I've said this, like, you don't always think of his back injuries when he's hitting those home runs because he has the most violent swing ever. Yeah. It more shows up when he swings and misses.
No, his torque is ridiculous.
Is crazy, but then it produces those majestic moonshots.
I know.
It was awesome. Like he is one of the rare baseball players that has the ability to completely take over a game. Like
so, and he also, what I love about him, because I love that he's here, right? And I think back to the Machado, is it Bryce, the whole thing. And Machado's a great player, but there's something about Bryce that he's like the spirit animal. Like he really is a very soulful kind of guy.
He has embraced the city in a way that it's rare. It's rare for people to do. Like, frankly, if I went to another city, I'm not sure I could embrace it the way he did. Now, maybe I'm not going to Philadelphia, so it's a little bit different, but they made the right decision for a lot of reasons, but I think that's a big one, right? For somebody to kind of step up and become the face of the franchise and just, I know people who cover the Phillies and say he's just like, he's a super intense guy. Like some of the media members, they don't always have the best interactions with him just because like he's intense. Like, and it's not because he's a bad guy, but I think he brings that intensity to just like reaching out to the fan base. Some people might even say, like maybe reaching out even like, what was the jacket he was wearing the other day?
It was the best. Yeah. I know people go, he's pandering.
Pandering, yeah.
No, I don't believe it. I think, the beauty is he's adopted this town, right? Like there are certain people that move here and go, I want to be a Philadelphian. And it's real. It's organic. I remember I used to work with Glenn Macnell, and Glenn grew up in Buffalo, and he loved Philadelphia. He wanted to be a Philadelphian, and like he loved it. And there are so many so many people that have moved from somewhere else here that love this town. And I think Bryce is just that.
Totally. And I think that's partially because of the people and the passion, but it's also because like being a superstar here and when you have the October moments and he has, and when you are kind of the playoff killer there, I saw that he was ranked like the 11th or 12th best player in baseball. Man, when you're playing a big game in October, he is not the 11th or 12th best player in baseball. I want that guy. There are very few people I would want ahead of him. When you are that type of player, there is no better place to be than here.
Well, and now let's go to the other superstar across the street. We couldn't wait. Like when he, and in typical Joel fashion, it was game time decision, right? The moment, listed as out on the injury report in the morning, not at the shoot around. And then there it is. He comes out to play.
Yeah, I think it was like 5:45. They were like questionable, which I don't know. I think he magically appears on that injury report.
Well, he's got the thing, like, he's got that flair for the dramatic, which I think is cool, but go ahead.
Well, and of course, TNT reports that the Sixers might get looked at for their injury reporting. Would not be the first time this year that they got looked at for Joel.
The whole league should get looked. The whole league's a joke. Are you kidding me? The injury report. Get the bleep out of here. That's insane. The whole thing's insane.
So you're right, guys. Who cares? He's back. Whatever. If Josh Harris is to pay $70,000,
yes.
So like he comes back, and here's the thing. I knew that when you get Joel Embiid back from a long layoff, it's not going to look like normal Joel Embiid. Frankly, like shorter layoffs, even when he's not coming off a serious injury. Do you remember the first game this year against the Milwaukee Bucks? Like Joel was the reason they lost that game. Like he was not playing to his caliber. He had bad turnovers down the stretch. Did that affect him in the following weeks? Did we forget about that right away? Yeah, we did. Like
especially when he dropped 70.
Totally. And after those first couple of games when he's rusty, he submitted, 2 or 3 of the best months of basketball that we've ever seen. So last night to me, what stood out though is that he's not in shape right now.
No, he's got no wind. Well, when you hurt your knee and it's January 30th, the last time you played, you're going to be winded. Like he was gassed. That guy right there, VG. Oh, look, he's grabbed his shorts already. Well, of course he is. What do you expect him to do? It's basketball, right? Like I don't care if you ride the bike and all your rehab. When you come out and actually play and have guys leaning on you and getting up and down the floor, you're going to be grabbing your shorts early, right? You're going to be huffing and puffing. And he huffed and he puffed his way to 24 points, 6 boards, 7 dimes, and 12 for 12 from the line and won the game.
Totally. 29 minutes, too. That's the biggest stat. The fact that he got those minutes. And, for him to come back with basically 2 weeks until they would have to play a play-in game. We'll see. Maybe they can get out of the plan. But 2 weeks probably until they have to play a play-in game. That's a lot of time for him. Like I think he can get back to his normal shape. And no, he was rusty. He was not the normal Joel. But I thought that was all conditioning related. And the fact that he battled through it was great. Like I think he was actually moving athletically pretty well. Like he wasn't always showing that, but I think it's because he was so tired.
Yeah.
And I think so.
You could even see it on one of the free throws. I think it was after he tried to go. It did steal off a kidney and takes it coast to coast, right? He leaned over the line, right? He makes it, but he almost stumbled over. I mean, you're going to be gassed after that. That's kind of how, especially when you're that size, when you're that big. We think about it from a normal human being.
Totally. I mean, look, he looked like me after a 6-month hiatus from pickup hoops,
right.
Whatever. But I don't weigh 300x pounds, whatever he weighs.
Right.
So he was gassed. I thought that play was really funny too because he makes the great steal on Giddey, great, end of the game, up 1, gets in a stance, steals the ball from the guy, a guard. And I think he stole it and he saw that he had the full court ahead of him. And I think he saw, oh, man, what did I get myself into? I have to run down the court and get this layup. And it wasn't pretty. He was chugging like a locomotive, and he kind of lost gas at the three-point line. But, look, he got it done.
Yeah.
And I saw enough from him.
But it's funny because your brain, and this will happen when you get older, your brain tells you could do things, and your body's like, nah, right? And that's kind of, you're right. He saw that opening. He's like, oh, all right. I can take it coast to coast.
I got to do this. I made this great play. I got to do this. And look, he ratcheted up the defense in the final few minutes. Normally, that Oklahoma City team is really good. I know they didn't have Shea. They didn't have Jalen Williams. but they really stink at one thing, guys. They stink at rebounding. And it's because they have like Chet Holmgren is playing the 5 for them a lot. And they are smaller up
Who,
front.
by the way, I like Chet. He's a good ball player.
Very good. And they are going to be very good for a long time.
Yeah.
But their one issue is they're not good against physical players. And when they are fully healthy in November, but the Sixers were healthy, they had Embiid and Maxey. Sixers win in Oklahoma City. It was a game that was not as close as the final score would indicate. Joe shoots 21 free throws, and like it was one of those because he could have shot 30. Like when he has his wind, like he can just overwhelm those guys physically. He didn't have the wind to play physically last night. Like there were times Jalen Williams was kind of taking away his jump shot. Normally, he's going by him. He's getting to the foul line. Like last night, he was settling for that shot just because like he just couldn't make it up and down the court.
Yeah.
And they were throwing double teams at him constantly.
Yeah.
It was like, look, it was a legitimately hard matchup. So for him,
they were blitzing him, and listen, that's how you're gonna listen. That's how everybody's gonna play him. Well, they're gonna blitz them. Now, the interesting thing is how they're built. Now we have Tim Legler coming up at the top of the hour, so we'll discuss this. But this supporting cast, I like the role players, right? Like because the role players, forget Maxey, because Maxey you need as a true companion. But between Buddy Hield and Oubre, you got guys and Campaign. You got guys that can actually score and within this space, right? So he gives you all the space in the world, and it's going to help out a lot.
You saw it a couple times last night. I think Buddy Hield has been kind of disappointing since coming over here. But
The first 5 games were ridiculous.
He was good, and then it's been a rough month since then.
Correct, yeah.
But that's okay, because I think Buddy Hield is the exact type of player. We've seen this. A smaller movement shooter. And by the way, like, would have been nice if the Sixers kept Isaiah Joe. Like that's one of their big scouting misses over the past couple of years. He was not as good here. I know people are getting on Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey for that. That was just a scouting miss because that guy, once he got in Oklahoma City system, I mean, man, he started making shots. Great movement player. Anyway,
although he missed a couple last night.
Oh man! And by the way,
he had clean looks at the end of that game to tie it.
Totally. And I was stunned that he missed them. I thought, classic me, Negadelphian thinking, oh, of course Isaiah Joe is going to be the guy to tie the game up. They lost him a couple of times.
I have to admit, and I'm the EO, the eternal optimist, but I actually thought same thing. I'm like, oh man, if freaking Isaiah Joe is going to tie the game. Are you kidding me?
He airballed one of them.
I know.
Too. Man, that was.
And he had clean. Those looks were clean.
They were great looks. So look, and that's kind of like the Sixers have had bad luck the past couple of weeks, man. Like that Clippers game last week, that was unlucky to lose that game.
Yeah.
The Cavs game on Friday, Maxey doesn't play that well. That's like, I'm not worried about Tyrese Maxey long term. That's unlucky. And so for them to get some of the breaks last night, Oubre played excellent last night, one of his better games. It's important. But like we were saying earlier, like he's going to make Buddy Hield better, man. Like those small movement shooters, JJ Redick, Seth Curry, like
exactly.
We have seen what Joel Embiid can do to amplify it. And I think we saw like with him and Lowry and a bunch of those guys, like he's going to make a bunch of these guys better.
It's going to be interesting. Look, again, we talked about it. What did the game mean? Not much, other than the fact that he played. Now he's got to get through the rest of the season, kind of get as much wind as possible. He's not going to be, back to himself by the time the playoffs start. It's just too soon. But you kind of work him into a playable situation, and you see what happens.
Totally. And like, look, it's kind of a weird thing, right? When we have seen the Sixers in past years, they usually come into the playoffs with two things: huge expectations and a nice, easy first-round series. This is the opposite. I think most people are saying, hey, they're playing with house money here.
Yeah.
And the first-round series is probably going to be hard. It's probably going to be, look, if they're in the play-in, it's most likely Milwaukee or Boston. But I will say, if they do get past, let's say they play Miami in the play-in and they get past that one, which I think they are more than capable of doing. Like, if I look at Milwaukee this year, and I look at the Sixers and I say, which team has given you the best 15 to 20 game stretch? At their best, which team has played better? It's not Milwaukee, man. Like what the Sixers did when Embiid was healthier earlier in the year, some of the things they were doing with Maxey, like it just felt more kind of playoff type basketball to me. Like they were more spontaneous than they were with Harden.
Well, they also with the problem with Harden, and as great as he is, and I'll always preface it by saying, Hall of Fame, the whole thing. But what makes him difficult to play with is that the ball
sticks. Yeah.
It's just he just dominates the basketball. And then if he's not hitting his shot or he doesn't have spring in his legs, he brings his whole team down.
Totally. And I think like we saw that in the playoff series last year, and we've seen it. I mean, we've seen it in the playoffs his whole career.
Yeah.
I don't want to just limit this to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It becomes a little bit predictable. And
It's why he hasn't won, truthfully.
And when teams can kind of load up on you and scout you better in the playoffs, and you got to play them 4 to 7 times in a row, there are diminishing returns on that style of basketball. Okay, so what the Sixers were doing earlier this year, which was interesting, Maxey was buzzing all over the place, right? They were doing kind of a little bit of an Embiid, a little bit of a Jokic Murray type game in Denver where, the defense doesn't exactly know what's happening. There's ball movement, there's cutting. Joel was passing it better than he ever has. So, I love how they have played this year. Can they, figure this thing out on the fly in the past couple weeks? I don't know. And that's cool. The cool thing is, I don't think the expectations are going to be too high, but I don't want to, forego the possibility that they could win one of those series. That it's okay, here's your best chance.
Now you make a run.
Yeah,
now you make a run.
It's possible.
Hey, I got one last thing for you, and I'm curious. Do we treat our superstars well? Do we show them enough reverence?
Are you talking about just with Joel?
In general, not just, he's a part of it, right? One of the things that the charge is against us is that Mikey Miss and I would talk about this all the time because he would rail on this we're way too happy with the grunts and the grinders, the muckers and grinders, and we don't show the superstars enough respect. And I think partly that's true. I'm just curious how you weigh in on it because we have an odd relationship with them.
Yeah, and look, I think Joe in particular is tough, right? Because he is, I think for the past 5 years, man, he's been one of the 2 or 3 best players in basketball.
Right.
He's been unbelievable, but he has never had that great playoff moment. And
true,
and it is look, I don't know if
there's true. Listen, there's been some mope times, right? The injuries, I understand when people talk about that.
And look, not all of it is his fault. Some of these are freak injuries, and some of it, he just has not played as well in the playoffs, and he has to prove that.
And part of it's what's been around him.
Oh, well, a lot of it's been.
And if you think about what him, look, the Jimmy Butler team, he was young. He didn't hit that maturity piece of it, And then when he does, look who you got. You got to deal with Simmons, and then you got to deal with Harden.
Totally, and all the bad trades and free agent signings and weirdness around him. So it's not all his fault. I think the way I would put it is when you have those great playoff moments, I don't think a city wraps its arms around you like Philadelphia, though. I don't think that
without a doubt
that high. But I do think we do hold them accountable.
But we do overlove the role players.
Yeah,
as opposed to gush over superstars.
Yeah, it's true. Like Joe has heard boos in his career in the regular season at times. And I'm not sure that happens as much in other places. But hey, look, we are imperfect. It's why I love living here.
I know. It's just a weird, and I think I like the psychology of it.
Yeah. So we're going to hold superstars more accountable, I would say, than most
That's
people.
fair.
And I think Bryce, it's probably.
We'll overlove TJ McConnell, who's a player. And TJ's a nice player. But we overlove, who's the backup catcher?
Chris Coast?
Coast. Yes, thank you, Rich. They love Coast. It's dude, Coast. We're going crazy over Chris Coast. Nice guy. We love these guys. Why do we love these guys? Why do we love the guys who play every day? What about Ryan Howard?
Yeah, but Chris Coast was almost 40.
Yeah. We love this story, too. It's funny. Richie, great stuff, my brother. As always, what do you got? What are you working on?
Just PHLY newsletter. I think maybe Julie or somebody could throw that link in the chat.
Yeah, we need to subscribe. You guys need to subscribe to the PHLY newsletter. It's awesome. Rich pens it. He's fantastic. I want to see more. I got ideas for you too. All right,
man.
All right.
I'm down.
Thanks, brother.
All right, man.
Yo, give the family my love.
Will do.
All right. Rich Hofmann